Narumoru, where 4 have died this morning in a road accident. And we'll also be speaking to Kevin Mutai, who is at our Mombasa bureau, giving us a bit of update in as far as the 14 Riverside terrorist attack is concerned. But before we get to all those details, let's start off with the sporting world. Sean Cadavillas.
Thank you very much, Gladys. Very good morning to you. We're getting news from overnight that the awards, there's more awards that's going to be happening, and we're seeing Eliud Kipchoge has been nominated, and this time it is just checking what it is exactly that he's been nominated for, but it is massive what he's been nominated for, and this is what it is. If I could just get the nominees for the laureates, he is here with Novak Djokovic, LeBron James, Luka Modric, Lewis Hamilton, and Kylian Mbappe. This is the Laureus Awards, so a massive event that's going to be happening. And of course, this now really puts into perspective what happened over Jamhuri Day, and he and of course other sportsmen and women being ignored by the government in terms of the annual nominations. Of course, people being acknowledged for what they've done this year, and Eliud Kipchoge, of course, capping off a great 2018 by being named the IAAF Male Athlete of the Year. So just to confirm, the Laureus Awards named overnight the nominations for the Male Athlete of the Year, and Eliud Kipchoge, the world marathon record holder, is one of the nominees, and of course it looks to be very competitive. Remember, Kylian Mbappe, a winner of the World Cup, Lewis Hamilton, a 4-time world champion, so he's in very good company. Other sporting news, congratulations. Nasser Al-Attiyah has won the 2019 Dakar Rally. So congratulations to him. We'll have full details on that, and also dramatic stuff in the bike category as well. And the Australian Open, that continues today. And once again, the heat is the center of attention. So sports on the way a little bit later right here on NTV.
Okay, Sean Cadavillas is bringing us the latest from the sporting world. We look forward to that update. We now cross over to Nyeri County. As I mentioned earlier on, our reporter Melita Oletenges is actually at an accident scene, and 4 have died in a Narumoru accident crash that involved a bus heading to Isiolo and G4S truck heading to Nairobi. He now joins us with an update.
Thank you very much, Gladys. But we are at the Narumoru police station. A gory accident happened along the Nyeri-Nanyuki highway at around 11:45 p.m. in the night. And the vehicles have already been towed here to the Narumoru police station. And as you can see behind me is that we have a wreckage of a bus and a truck that were involved in an accident. We understand that the bus, the 45 passenger bus, was heading from Nairobi towards Moyale via Isiolo before it was involved in a head-on collision with a G4S truck that was ferrying goods, or rather, you know, G4S is a carrier services, so it was ferrying goods from Meru headed to Nairobi via Karatina. And the accident is said to have happened at around 11:45 p.m. We understand that up to this point, around 4 people are said to have lost their lives, including 4 passengers that were seated on the front seat of this G4S truck. Now, we are yet to get the finer details of this accident from the OCPD here at the Narumoru police station, rather. But what we know at the moment is that casualties were rushed to the Narumoru sub-county hospital, and other casualties were also rushed to the Nyeri County Referral Hospital. So, Gladys, we are still yet to get the finer details of this accident. But what we know also is that these vehicles had I think were full to capacity, both of them, and we understand that just as the accident happened, they were both in full speed. That is why they came head-on collision. But Gladys, we are still trying to get the finer details of this accident here at the Narumoru police station. I will be giving you the details as we get them. Gladys.
Thank you, Melita Olatange, speaking to us from the Narumoru police station, where 4 died along the Narumoru road in an accident involving a bus heading to Moyale via Isiolo, and it was a head-on collision with a G4S truck. Well, as he said, he will be updating us with more information about those that have been taken to hospital and how they're faring on, and of course a comment from the police officers from that area. But for now, we cross over to the coast region, and our reporter Kevin Mutai is at the Mombasa Bureau, and he now joins us with the latest from that end.
Thank you so much, Gladys, and we are glad to join the broadcast from Mombasa. Here we have quite a number of stories lined up for you today, and top on our list today is we are still following up on the ongoing investigations into the 14 Riverside attack that occurred in Nairobi, and reports that we are receiving. These aren't confirmed reports, but we are told that detectives arrived here in Mombasa and raided areas of Majengo, Kibokoni and Bondeni, where we are told that they picked up a few individuals who are believed to have crucial information that will help detectives uncover and unearth the reasons, and also, of course, those who planned and orchestrated the attack against 21 people, and of course others who were injured during the terrorist attack that occurred at Dusit D2, that is in Riverside in Nairobi. Yesterday we spoke to various people, and according to an interview that we did yesterday, we were informed that one of the terrorist suspects, and we were told that he had been here in Mombasa, and of course he had some conversation with a couple of people before he fled to Isiolo, Meru, Embu, and came back to Mombasa, then landed or found himself in Lamu, where we were told that according to some people we spoke to, that is where they lost touch, and for 2 years then the suspect came back, and of course this happened. The attack that occurred in Nairobi happened after 2 years with the lost touch, but we believe that detectives are already on that, and we are yet to follow on the ongoing investigations, and we'll be keeping you updated on the happenings from here. And of course also we are following on another story whereby PS ICT and Innovation, Jerome Ocheng, is also here in Mombasa, whereby he will be visiting the Cable Land Point and Fort Jesus Protection Wall project, and he will be giving a press conference on that particular story. Also, we have a press conference of the Kenya Classification Board, and we are told that the board is currently discussing the industry players, their acts, which they're saying that some of them are contravening the regulations of that particular film and classification industry, whereby I guess they want to present some guidelines and of course issue a warning of those particular players who are going against the classification regulations. And of course we are also on we're still also on the story that we aired a couple of days ago, whereby tons and tons of bad maize are being destroyed here in Mombasa after they were discovered by detectives from the Special Crimes and Prevention Unit that this particular grain was supposed, or rather they were about to be sneaked into the market. And as we're speaking right now, it's been almost a week and the destruction is still happening at Bamburi Cement, whereby the maize is being destroyed. And also yesterday we aired a story about a student who scored 408 marks in his KCPE exams at Sparky Primary School here in Mombasa. The family stays in Majengo, and after we aired the story 1 p.m. yesterday, an alumni from Kakamega are here in Mombasa, and we are told at around 9:30 they'll be visiting the boy in Kachonjo slums here in Mombasa, whereby I'm told that the boy is supposed to travel on Sunday to report to school. He was given an ultimatum of 1 week to report, of which if he fails to go to school, his position will be given to another student, and we will be covering that for you. Gladys, those are just a few stories that we have lined up for our viewers today in Mombasa, but of course we have our eyes and ears out there. Anything that occurs or rather comes up from this particular region, we assure you that we're going to cover all that for you. Of course, with my team here, Karim Rajan and Peter Wainaina, we will be following all that for you. But as of now, Gladys, I hand it back to you in studio.
Thank you, Kevin Mutai. Clearly a huge list on your diary, something to look forward to throughout the day. Thank you for that. We shall be getting in touch with you as and when you're ready for us. Well, this morning our core conversation around reproductive health, and actually it is shouldered by that feature we brought to you in the past weekend called The Healing Pain. And this morning the conversation will be around busting myths, trying to understand why some communities are still holding on to some of this, some would call retrogressive methods of reproductive health, and also some of the challenges involved in trying to help them change and inculcate modern methods in some of these communities, reasons to do with social, economic, religious and cultural issues. But before we get to that, I'm informed my colleague Bernard Ojwang is actually in Rongo, Migori County, and he now joins us with his own perspective from that county.
Well, thank you very much. We are here in North Kamagambo, to be precise, Luala Health Center, whereby we'll be interacting with the medics here, community health workers, and even also traditional birth attendants who have been trained at least to support women in this village. Remember, this is where, when you talk about reproductive health, we talk about the issue of fertility and infertility, HIV and AIDS, STIs that are also connected. Once somebody is affected with STIs, there's a high probability of being affected or get him or herself in the issue of fertility and infertility. And now we will be talking to one lady here who used to be a traditional birth attendant here. Remember, in rural areas, once a young lady is married to maybe somebody, the only thing coming to his or her mind here is to make sure to give birth, and now we'll be talking to them, and we'll know more about the issue of reproductive health in this region. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Bernard Ojwang. Definitely will be crossing over to hear the perspective from that county. And even as I touched on the fact earlier on that we're speaking about healing pain, a feature that we brought to you in the past weekend, and it is a common condition that many women experience, and the urinary tract infection, that's the UTI. Some may appear easy to just walk into a pharmacy and get medication or even seek the doctor's attention, and there are communities that still have no access to these modern treatment options. Now, women and girls from the pastoral communities living in Tana River County fall in this category, and for these women, a UTI literally means a painful encounter with a traditional hot treatment that involves inserting hot metal rods into their private parts. And now, still on reproductive health, the ability of women to bear children continues to define a woman's place in marriage and a society in many Kenyan communities. Now, the pressure to deliver quite literally drives many couples, and specifically women, to go to great lengths to hold their families and marriages together. Now, still in Tana River, women who are dealing with infertility find themselves in very awkward situations, which sometimes push them to seek desperate solutions. Now, one of these solutions is actually the traditional opening up of the birth canal using sticks. Watch this.
10 o'clock in the morning at the home of Halima Ginya Saidai in Marereni Town, Kilifi County. The mother of 11 children is quite busy. You may be forgiven for thinking that the fire being lit here is for cooking. However, that's not the case. Halima is up for some serious curative business. The 56-year-old is a traditional birth attendant who doubles up as a healer for urinary tract infection patients as well as women facing infertility issues in the area.
Anaanza wakati nimekuwa mtoto mbili, alafu naanza huko Tanarifa, alafu nakuja banda hii watu Tanarifa, nakuja hapa na shoma, wale wa hapa kaunti Kilifi pia nakuja hapa kwangu saidia na shoma.
Halima has been practicing the burning skill, as they call it, for the last 36 years. In this kind of cure, they burn the affected area in the vagina. It is a skill she learned from her late mother, who cured her too, after failing to conceive her second child for close to 4 years.
Wakati naolewa bana, nasaa mtoto wa kwanza, ya pili mimi nakawia kuzaa. Basi ameshoma mama, basi mimi nikapata mimba.
Halima treats girls as young as 9 years old and women as old as 35 years. This is because most of the girls in Tana River County suffer the urinary tract infection, an infection that occurs in any part of one's urinary system. The infection here in Tana River is believed to largely affect women and girls who undergo female genital mutilation in the county, especially from pastoralist communities.
Wakati natahiriwa anashoma, baada ya kutahiriwa anaona anaanza kujikuna, naona anasikia uchungu, wakati napata damu nasikia tumbo nauma, basi hiyo nachoma.
Cases za UTI ziko mingi, is one of the conditions ambaye locally iko kwa wingi. But now when you do that FGM, ukifanya that cut, it's now you are compromising the whole system. Unakuta wengine wakifanywa FGM, they will end up getting kama periods ilikuwa maybe inafanyika 2-3 days, now ina change. Maybe inaweza kuta mama ana bleed throughout. Because now due to that bleeding, infection may set in. Ndio sababu unakuta wanajikuna mara mingi.
Fatuma Abdullahi, Halima's daughter, is among the beneficiaries of her mother's curing skills. She got the infection when she was 9 years old.
Unajua mbele wakati niko mdogo anatahiriwa. Sasa hiyo ndani ametoka kitu kama jibu hivi. Najikuna natoka uchafu. Basi nimeficha alafu baadaye akisikia kwa joa nawashwa. Nikuja kwa mama, nimeelezea. Mama, mimi niko na shida hivi na hivi. Na mama hajui mambo ya hospitali. Sasa ameniambia si sheria yetu unashomanga. Ambia unafanyaje? Anasema unawekwa chuma kwa moto anakushomea. Nakomi basi na goba. Mama anaita watu wengi kama watu 10 hivi. Watu wananishika kwa nguvu ndio amenishoma. Wakati umanishoma, ilikuwa ni maka 9, si ndio? Mpaka sasa ni kwa maka 24. Hajarudia tena mimi mambo yangu. Mpaka sasa niko sawa.
Fatuma agrees that the process is painful. However, she had to bear the pain for her to heal.
Ni uchungu wakati anakushoma. Ni uchungu. Lakini ile dawa nimekwambia nini fujo na ikakuwa maji, unaoshwa kama siku 3 hivyo uko chini. Na unameza na unakunywa maji.
Hiyo ni kabla uchomwe ama ni baada ya kuchomwa?
Wakati ameshomwa umaliza ndio unaosha.
But just how does Halima go about this process?
Samani sisi nakaa huko msituni, hakuna taa, hata hii jiko hatujui. Jiko kama maka 10 tu hivi sasa ina soya hii jiko, hapana jua hata jiko. Nachukua kuni na wakicha, naenda huko msituni anashoma. Kama ni msijana kidogo, bado olewa bana mtoto kidogo atashoma hiyo. Nachukua hii nashoma hii. Alafu kama bila naoa bana lakini bado saa atashona hii. Sasa kama yule na saa matoto atashoma hii juku. Sasa hiyo hii bila msijana kidogo wakati bado olewa bana kwa sababu ametahiriwa, mira yote ngozi yake yote ameshonwa na kekata. Ile nakekata bado bana bata kidogo nafasi bana anafanya hivi mimi natanganeza hii belasti mimi natanganeza naweka hapa. Sasa ngozi yake kidogo ataenda huko natembea kidogo na bata nafasi ni kidogo ni hivi, alafu naweka hivi kidogo ngozi wakati inakuwa hivi mimi nachukua hii chuma kidogo atachoma hivi. Sasa kama ni alafu wakati kabla ya kushoma hii kitambaa natia maji hapa, ile mahali keketa, ile na keketa anaweka hivi, kwa sababu ukiwasha hii nguo maji anashomeka, ile nguo yake ile masuri hataki kushomeka. Sasa hii kitambaa naweka maji, hii maji naweka hivi, ongosi ni hii ataweka hivi. Sasa hii naweka hivi, nafanya hivi, alafu hapa ukipata nafasi kidogo nachukua hii na shoma.
Back in Tana River County at Malindi Angwena village in Hola, we meet Amina Gamalo Kudai. Amina is carrying 2 sticks, which she has just cut from a special tree known as muhumbi in Pokomo language. These 2 sticks are the tools her mother used to create for her a birth canal so that she could conceive. This is after suffering infertility issues for close to 7 years in marriage.
Yani alinipima, alafu ndo akaanza tiba ya kunikanda. Ile mwanzo ambao aliponikanda, nimeendelea hivyo mpaka leo. Nishafikisha watoto 6, wasichana 3 na wavulana 3.
Amina's mother is a traditional birth attendant. However, she also helps women with infertility issues here in Tana River. She is 85 years old, but that has not deterred her from doing her work, which she strongly believes that it is a skill that only God can provide.
Hicho ni kipawa chake, kwa sababu katika hiyo kujifunza hakuna mwingine ambaye amekijua katika hiyo mafunzo, ni yeye peke yake. Hii kijiti ambao anakuweka hii nyumba ya uzazi, akishapima nyumba ya uzazi, akishaipima hiyo nyumba kwamba hiyo nyumba iko lakini imefunga, hakuna alama, lakini hiyo nyumba ya uzazi iko, ndo mamangu sasa hutumia kile kijiti kutoboa. Sasa akishatoboa paka ndani, hiyo kutoboa huwa anatumia hii vijiti viwili, kama hili ambalo ni lembamba na hili moja ni kubwa. Sasa anaanzisha na hili nyembamba, kwanza aweke alama ya kutoboa. Akishamaliza anatumia hili kubwa ili iwe ile nafasi iwe ni kubwa pale kwa nyumba ya uzazi. Hiyo nyumba ya uzazi kufungana, yani hii alama, hii nyumba ya uzazi huwa iko hivi, na kufungana mahali ambao mamangu ambao anatumia hiki kijiti anakiwekelea hapa katikati kwa kutoboa hii nyumba ya uzazi. Na hicho kijiti utakiona paka huku nje ya tumbo, utakidara. Hiki ambao kikiingia ndani huku utakiona na huku juu kwamba hiki ni kijiti. Wacha kukisikia, utakiona hasa ukishika hivi mkono, ukisindilia hivi ndani, utakisikia kwamba hiki ni kijiti. Na hivi vijiti akitumia kama kwa mfano kama mimi ambao ndio mtoto wake ambao amenitumia na hivi vijiti viwili, kama kuna mwingine wa kukanda, naye pia ataenda kumchukulia vijiti vyake viwili vya kumtumia. Na huko kukanda anachukulia kama muda wa wiki kukufanyia hiyo kitu ya kutoboa na hiki kijiti kwa pande ya uzazi. Baada ya siku moja unapumzika, siku ya pili unakuja. Baada ya siku moja unapumzika, siku ya pili unakuja. Wale ambao wanakuja katika hizo shida za kizazi, akikuja akimwanzisha kama ni muda wiki akimkanda, anakaa mwezi mmoja, wa pili anapata mimba. Mimi nimekaa miezi 2, wa 3 nikashika mimba ya huyu kijana. Hii tamaduni mimi nimeiona kwangu mimi, kwa vile nimefanyiwa, kwa vile amefanyia na wengine, pia mimi nimeona raha na nimeridhika. Sijui kwa wengine ambao wamefanyiwa, wale wengine ambao hawajafanyiwa, wale wengine ambao wanataka watoto, wale wengine ambao wana watoto, sijui maoni yao, lakini maoni yangu mimi nimeridhika.
The healing pain documented by Diana Kendi and our camera person Paul Basweti. Of course, this aired last weekend and we had a lot of you reacting to it. And to some, it literally spotlighted ignorance around reproductive health, but also shed light on the obvious cultural, religious, social and economic hurdles that drive some of these communities to such methods. So the question this morning, and we'll be trying to also find solutions, is to look at why and the challenges that keep deterring some of these communities from embracing more modern methods and possible solutions that would help in inculcating alternative reproductive health methods. Now, to delve into this conversation this morning, I am joined by Dr. Nelly Bosire. She is a gynecologist. Thank you for your time. Next to her is George Oele, who is a community health strategy technical advisor at AMREF. Thank you for your time. And next to him is Sadia Hussein, coordinator of Daya Women Group, which educates communities and speaks on the dangers of retrogressive and harmful cultural practices, and was also very helpful in documenting the healing pain. Thank you, Sadia, for making time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we were watching this, I could see you wincing, literally wincing to some of the narrations that were being made by the different speakers in the feature. To start with you, Daktari, you have been around the country, but still, this shocked you. Why?
Well, it's just amazing just what kind of pain a human being can put themselves through when there are so many options, you know. It's not easy to, first of all, let somebody into your own privacy, because this is an intrusion into your personal space. And then, I mean, there's a lot of trust involved. So obviously for the women to feel safe enough, first of all, to go to the traditional care attendant, and also to be able to go through such a procedure. Knowing what I know scientifically, the amount of pain involved, the effects of what would possibly result from the procedures that we are seeing being shown, it's a lot.
Okay, George Oele, I mean, you are in charge of a group of community health workers that are distributed across the 47 counties, and day in, day out, you hear different stories of how each community has quote-unquote unique ways of dealing with reproductive health. Was this a shocker to you?
Indeed, Gladys, it's a shocking experience in terms of what we are viewing in the current time we live in today in Kenya. And indeed, as you call on us here to share with the nation, as the title clearly stated, the healing pain, surely they need to be healed. There is something need to be done, and sooner than later. And we can't wait, because Kenya is one community and God created everyone in the same way. So if other communities have a way out of the cultural beliefs, the religious beliefs that have allowed them now to live happily, then we need to go there.
Okay, now Sadia, you come from this part of the country, and looking at people's reactions, clearly you could tell one man's meat is another's poison. But you come from a school of thought that none of those traditional methods we've actually viewed should be used on you or your children, and you've actually said no to the same. Why?
Thank you, Gladys. This thing is really traumatizing. And actually, I'm not a survivor. I'm fortunate enough because I didn't go through this. But coming from that horrible pain of FGM, I still understood the real pain these women are again going through this. So having the fact that also my family members, my sister went through this.
The burning?
Yes. And what happened is that when these women fail to bear children, they have to go out of their way to look for any means possible to get children. And I feel their pain. But again, there is one thing that's I don't understand really. Because maybe it's because I'm educated, I don't understand. I don't feel the reason as to why a woman can go to such extent of taking the risk of getting a ban while the man is just seated somewhere relaxing without even getting concerned about the infertility issue. What if the chances are the man is infertile, not the woman? I really feel for them, that these women are really desperate to either treat these UTIs, to either get infertility, because it's done to curb infertility, and it's also used to treat UTI. And also, when someone is slim,
yes,
they feel maybe they'll get weight to build their body. How can burning your private parts give you weight? How is that possible? How is it even logic? How is it realistic? So you see, I feel their pain. Maybe it's because they have gone through FGM. So this is not even something new to them. They have already endured one pain, so now they can also get the risk of getting the ban.
Okay, and it's interesting now that Sadia has touched on the various reasons why they undergo this method of curing either UTIs, infertility. There's also cramps, and also the fact that there's weight on it. One of those that was actually interviewed in this series was actually banned 3 times because every time there was a reason to do so. But today she says, so many months later, she's never healed from the previous banning. So the question here, Daktari, is what is the relation? Let's start, you know, busting the myths here, because they believe so much there's a relation between burning and healing reproductive health. Some have said it works, others clearly it does not work. So, relation between FGM and maybe infertility.
Well, what we're seeing is out of this world, you know, and it's happening right here where we are. To just go ahead and cause that kind of trauma to a human body is not even right. We're struggling with people who have had accidents and have had injuries and they have scars on their faces and their bodies that we're struggling to heal, and yet we have people who believe that causing that kind of scarring is going to cause healing. I'm listening to what they're discussing and the symptoms they're giving. There is actually no way to be sure that what they're even talking about is urinary tract infection. I listened to that lady's daughter saying that, oh, she was having itching. UTI doesn't cause itching. Most likely that is just what we call a vaginal candidiasis, which is just a yeast problem. And that one, whether you treat it or not, a lot of the times it will disappear on its own because it's a problem that comes. I mean, all women have yeast in their vagina naturally. That's a normal thing, okay? It's not an infection that you're acquiring from anywhere. What happens is that throughout the period of the cycle, the cycle of the monthly period, there is a rise and fall of hormones, and at some point it will favor the yeast growing and other times it will not. So at that point where the yeast is more likely to thrive, then some people, it may actually grow so much until they have symptoms. And what they are talking about calling uchafu dat, it's just a discharge. It's a yeast discharge. It's white. It's usually quite white and not very, I mean, most people, it will have a sickly sweet kind of smell, but it will not kill you. Okay, and it can cause a lot of itching and a lot of discharge, and we treat because of the discomfort. But most people, it will be so mild, their period will come and pass and it will settle on its own. Nobody needs to go through that kind of scarring. Now, what the scarring is doing for them is that it's actually killing a lot of sensation in that area. The nerves are dead, they've been burnt to death. So even if you got a subsequent yeast infection, you don't have anything to give you the sensation of itching because you already killed the nerves that would sense that. So then they get this belief that I was burnt once and cured for life. Actually, you weren't. There wasn't anything to warrant that kind of damage. Now, with FGM, we know that there are various grades of mutilation that happens to the genital area. And the very extreme end that most people will be talking about in a community like that, then would actually involve that, where they cut off the clitoris, they cut off the labia minora, they actually really mutilate the area, and it heals with scar. And they even go out of their way to stitch up the vaginal opening and leave just a really small hole that would then allow the period to flow out. Now, most of them will come back when they are going to get married, so that this can be opened up. So the trauma never stops. You have trauma to cause the FGM, you have trauma to allow marriage so that the woman can now be able to engage in sexual contact. Thereafter, she's going to get pregnant. Delivery is going to be a nightmare. The birth canal is made very, very flexible. The tissue is very soft and able to stretch really wide. So what happens is that when you cause scarring, it loses that elasticity. So when the baby's head is coming, it's going to rip through. The baby isn't going to stop coming because there is FGM. It's going to tear up, and the damage that is caused is terrible. So they heal with worse scarring, because healing a scar is much worse than healing a first-time injury. And this then will cause them trauma for the rest of their lives.
And George, in your line of work, of course, FGM is one of those leading retrogressive methods that are still used by some of the communities in our 47 counties. And as Dr. Busiri is touching on the fact that there's type 1, 2, and 3 of FGM. And in this case, one of the doctors we spoke to during that series of Healing Pain, he said the FGM itself actually gives room to some of the women to actually even be more prone to the infections. So really you think you're curing one thing, but you're giving room to another. So it is a vicious cycle, right?
True. You see, when that level of mutilation is done to the woman is exposed to various types of infections. And apart from infections of the different types that can come from the natural environment, you realize that the pain through which they go in that kind of mutilation can also cause continuous bleeding that is on and off, that they don't know the cause, and they align that to myths and beliefs. It can also contribute to infertility, as the doctor is saying. So all these are challenges that are coming up with the practice of FGM in these communities. But as we are today, as AMREF as an organization, we are partnering with communities in a big way nowadays to address these challenges. And the partnership is taking us through the Maasai communities as our entry point, where we have worked with the Maasais in Kajiado, in Marsabit communities, and now we are extending to other parts of the country, especially we are in Turkana today. And we are looking at how do we address these challenges.
Okay, now before we get to the addressing of those challenges, let's go back to Tana River a little bit. Sadia, some, as you said, maybe it's the fact that you're educated and you do know that these methods are harmful, so you have stayed away from them and you've decided your own children will not go through the same. But what are the reasons why some of these people still go back to doing the same thing over and over again, despite seeing, obviously, the side effects to the same? What are their reasons?
One thing you should understand is that by the way, when this story was exposed, actually I came to realize that it was not only in Tana River, but it's a Somali culture. It's a Somali way of healing, of treating these issues. Because I got so many inboxes, so many calls that everyone else was telling me, but that's called San'a in our language. And again,
what does that mean?
San'a is a way of treating, like someone who has that skills. It's only someone with those skills can do that, actually. Not everyone. A person like me cannot treat someone with those issues. So San'a means treatment by a skilled person. So this thing was, I didn't know in the first place that it was cross-cutting. I just thought maybe it's in my community in Tana River. But again, I came to learn it's everywhere. And one thing that's pressuring these people to continue doing it and doing it more and more is because of three things. One, since they were brought up, they have seen even their mothers, their daughters, their sisters going for the same. And they have never came to know that there are other methods that exist that can cure them. They don't know about those issues. again, the second thing that pressures them to go for this kind of treatments is the fact that they fear maybe their men will go and look for others, so they will be in that position to endure the pain rather than making the husband go away. The third thing is that because they believe it gives them a permanent solution. It gives them a permanent solution. And for me, from my own perspective of understanding, I think they think it's a permanent solution because, you know, when you burn somewhere, it leaves a scar. And that scar cannot even develop another wound because it's a scar now. And now that infection will not stop because you have not treated inside the kidneys, inside your uterus. No, you just treated a mere part of the vagina. You are just putting so many scars in a place that was supposed to be
treated.
Yes, protected. And again, having the fact that these people have undergone FGM, for them to undergo again that the hot rod metal pain, it's just simple for them. It's normal. But to be very sincere, I think there is something wrong with the way men take our women. There is something wrong because I think it's the responsibility of the man to make sure that his wife gets medication. He should understand that there are so many avenues that can heal this woman. How on earth maybe is he staying with this woman and maybe going for another while he's not even treated his first wife? Why? Why is that so? Why are these women maybe showing their power? Why? Why is that so? So for me, I think the point is that, again, another factor, we don't have hospitals in the rural areas, nearby hospitals. So the fact that these people cannot even access those dispensaries, maybe with the kind of treatments they want. And another thing that also adds up, it's not easy for someone to open up that I have this kind of issues. It's not that easy.
That's a good point you bring up. And Dr. Busire, I think this is something you can actually even agree. Whether you're in Tana River, modern, urban setting, the issues, some issues that have to do with reproductive health are still hush-hush, true?
Very true. Very, very true. Reproductive health is one of those areas that are actually make up quite a huge chunk of healthcare issues anywhere. And as long as we keep thinking or equating reproductive health to women's care, then we have a problem. There is a lot of discrimination on reproductive health. At the high end, let's go to insurance, for instance. How many things will an insurance company tell you? I will not cover for contraceptives. I will not cover for a miscarriage. I will not cover for that. Why are you making these exclusion criteria? These are basic reproductive health services. So it trickles all the way down. If we haven't properly addressed it at policy level in this country, it's going to trickle all the way down. Now, when we go to the cultural aspect, imagine in people who are educated and exposed and can talk about the reproductive problems, how much worse is it culturally where women's issues have been made very hush-hush? So a woman will suffer in silence because nobody is supposed to know what she's going through. And so it becomes that reproductive health issues are just propagated within women. I have a problem, I talk to my mother, I talk to my sister, I talk to my grandmother. I don't talk to the person who's making health decisions in the home. Who makes health decisions? It's the men, because they have the purchasing power. This is what UHC is trying to address. That are we able to say, look, it doesn't matter what your problem is, this basic care must be accessible to everybody. Now, access is not just about availing facilities. That's the first place we have to start. Do we have facilities? Are they well stocked? Do they have drugs? Do they have consumables? Do they have the right manpower to take care of the people? But that's more on the government side. We have to work with communities, as I will tell you, that different communities respond differently. I'll give you an example. I remember when I was in medical school and we did our rural hospital attachment, I was based in Vihiga at the health center. And the new Vihiga County Referral Hospital now had just been built. Beautiful hospital. It was well equipped. It was new and well taken care of.
but the people would not go there.
Why?
Why? Because the hospital came with, of course, new medical people. So there were doctors and nurses who had been posted by the national government from across the country to work there. So somebody goes there and says, I don't even know who that is sitting on that desk. Let me go to the health center because I know that nurse, she's my neighbor from home. You understand? So they're more likely to talk to the person they're more familiar with. And it was a wonderful facility, but it took a very long time to start being fully utilized. This is the same thing. Today, even if we went to Tana River and put a health center every 5 kilometers, there's going to be the issue that the community must build trust in this facility and the people there to be able to agree to go and seek care in these spaces. And this works even, this is more obvious in the communities that have been marginalized for so long from accessing healthcare. I've been to Tana River. I was in Tana River more than 10 years ago at a time when there's so much they didn't have. They didn't even have a bridge to cross the Tana River. They used a rowboat. Yeah, and at that point, it was a drought season. The Tana River level was low, and when that happens, there's a lot of hippo attacks because they're very irritable. So we had all manner of hippo injuries, crocodile bites, and all that would come to what was barely a health center. You know, at that time, Gawa was not even a sub-county hospital as it is now. There were so many resources that were lacking, but you could tell the people they were fine. No, they don't even talk about what they don't know is a right that they have access to. There was no electricity. There was no access to communication. The facilities actually communicated on radio talk. That's how bad things were. So you have a complication. You're telling this community person who's never left that village that your condition, we need to refer you 200 kilometers away to Malindi to seek care. And they look at you and they think, what? I'm not going. So there's more to access than just availing facilities. There's a lot of work which these people do as AMREF. You have to go into the community, understand their culture. Because when you bring something that they feel is right up against their culture, they're going to resist. So you must work with what they've got to tell them, look, you do this, we can do it better this way.
All right, and those are some of the solutions we'll be speaking on the same. Before we take a short break, quickly, George, even as we were listening to the healing pain, there was one of the ladies that said she went to a doctor when she had the UTI infection, and the doctor gave them the medication necessary to do so. But when she went home, her mother said, when Adam and Eve were leaving, they did not have hospitals and medication. Put that on the side. I'll call a traditional healer, and this is how we're going to go about it. To date, she's never healed of the same. Some of those challenges that you deal with have that face on them, right?
True. Those are, you know, the religious beliefs. Religious beliefs and cultural beliefs go side by side. And you realize that most of these beliefs are embedded in the community structures, the community systems. And it calls for the communities to be put together. Like Nelly is saying, access is not only at the facility, access at the household level, access at the structures that are existing. So when you realize that people are living in that level of ignorance, then it calls for people who are given the responsibility, have the mandate, both at the community level, both at the government side, both parties need to find a way out. Because what we are discussing here is of remote parts of the nation, as we may be believing today. You go to Vihigas, he's talking about people coming to the health facility. Or they come with selective, so who is my neighbor, a nurse or a clinician or a doctor, then health is not there for me. But how are we going about it? Because these are the key challenges. They are all over, whether you are in Migori, we have been watching Luala Community Center is struggling to address issues of reproductive health. And that is a community where people believe that people are informed. No, they are not. If you look at the level of the rate of maternal and child health there, the rates of maternal deaths, infant mortality, you'll be shocked. This is because information has not penetrated up to the household level. That should be the beginning.
Okay, and at that point, I'll read some of the comments coming through Twitter at Galdys_Gachanja at NTV Kenya. There's Mboya here who says these communities really need to be taken through some civil education and to be empowered too. The government of Kenya agencies should ensure these communities have an access to modern health. He of course tags at Cecily Kariuki, the CS for Health, and he says, I believe the Ministry of Health Kenya can come up with policies to address these issues. As my panelists are saying, this is a communal effort to make sure that we change some of these perspectives in as far as dealing with reproductive health is concerned. And when we will look at more of those challenges. technical advisor at AMREF, and Sadia Hussein, a coordinator with Daya Women Group in Tana River County. Now, just listening even to the lady who used to be a traditional birth attendant, clearly she has been converted to the modern ways of doing things. That's why she's at the health center. And she says sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not work. So for those that say it works, Daktari, coincidence or fact?
Well, you know, we always say in science we need proof, and especially in medical science. You would actually see that even by the time research in medicine is accepted, it is so rigorous because it has to conform to international standards. So we don't speak for what we don't know. And that then is the reason why we've been having challenges being able to bring this conversation about traditional healing or whatever traditional methods of healing to the table when we're talking about medicine, because we don't have scientific research around what is happening. They could or could not be beneficial, we don't know that, but we know that things like medication, some of them arose from that. I mean, malaria treatment right now, when we talk about quinine, is actually a derivative from the tree, from a cinchona tree, which people used it traditionally, but we did not know about dosage, about side effects, about such things. So we don't talk about what we don't know. But what I would like to say is that when it comes to infertility, this is one topic that is very broad and cannot be easily just discussed like that. Infertility, first of all, involves two people. There is a couple here involved. And there are various reasons why a woman may be unable to conceive. They could have issues with hormones, which may or may not respond to some of the things they take. They could have issues with the reproductive system itself, which is unlikely to respond to the things that they are talking about. So there is a reason why there is science and research, and we learn every day, even us as medics. What I learned 20 years ago is not what is currently in practice. Things are changing, new technologies are coming in, we're understanding things better. And so it's an art that doesn't stop. It's a science that has to keep growing for it to remain relevant. So we may not be able to know what they're talking about, but we're happy that people are paying attention, that we're not investing all this in science for it to go to waste, yet the people it is supposed to benefit are still stuck on their ways and saying, no, it's a traditional way of the highway. Yeah.
And speaking of ignorance, George, earlier on you were touching on the fact that some of those pastoralist communities, as now that we're talking about where the peace healing pain came from, which is Tana River, and focusing on the pastoralist women, there's some things they are not aware of that normally, you know, affect the cycle of a woman and also speaks to conception.
True, because when we listen to the conversation coming from the communities, either in Luala, in Migori, or from Tana River, you realize that there is what we call inadequate information, lack of knowledge, accompanied with ignorance. This is because these areas have not been reached, despite the fact that the policies are in place. The government put up a very rigorous policy called community health strategy approach towards access to health right at the community level. But up to today, you realize that not all parts of the country is covered, and therefore ignorance continuously play. When you look at the discussion of that traditional birth attendant that is converted, it clearly states how that community has been reached with this new approach. Community health strategy started all the way back in 2006. And it started, yes, in Nyanza is where most of the pilot areas came up. And the Luala community and the government had a partnership to bring out, ensure that the policy is completely adopted. What was the policy? One of the key things is that the government banned traditional birth attendants from that practice of delivering women at home. And that means if you are found, then definitely you are going to take legal measures. Legal measures will be taken against you. And this was accompanied by campaigns involving community health workers to go to the households and educate the people on behavior change, on the new practices, science, which Dr. Nelly is talking about, that people can only access quality health from qualified practitioners. But you can see inaccessibility clearly coming out in many parts of the country still. Yeah. This tells us of the gap that is still there in the country. And now look at the country is talking about today on universal health coverage. What are some of the measures that the country is putting in place when we are still talking about that the healing pain in Tana River? You go to Turkana, there are certain parts of Turkana whom you cannot reach unless you go through their structures. And so no health facilities are there and access to health is almost impossible. But something is happening.
Okay.
So that is what we are talking today. What is it that is happening and should be happening so that we clearly understand the universal health coverage in the country and allow our people to access quality health care?
Okay, now, Sadia, you are on the ground, and this has been brought to light, and many other activities have been happening on the ground, especially against FGM and other retrogressive methods and harmful methods of dealing with reproductive health. When some of the either government or private stakeholders try to infiltrate the communities, what are some of those hurdles they have to deal with? And for where they've been able to penetrate, what have been the tricks used to help some of these people take in some of the modern methods of doing things?
Thank you, Gladys. Before I even answer you, I want to bring to your attention how Tana River looks like. Tana River is 38,000 square kilometers and it's sparsely populated. You can imagine maybe the nearest health facility can be just a dispensary without even a nurse, or maybe without even the proper medications you may need.
Okay.
Now, imagine a woman who wants to deliver, and the way he said it was traditional birth attendants were banned from helping these mothers. Now, will it be realistic for someone who wants to deliver without transport to reach a hospital that's more than 200 kilometers? Is it that possible? So now, coming back to your questions, what happens is that as a Daya Women Group, whenever we go talk about FGM, we know there is something else that these women are going through. So what we do after the session, we always go with a nurse or a doctor from the hospital. They accompany us. So after the training and telling them about the health effects of FGM, and I know one of the effects of FGM is also the infections. So now, infection, infertility, all these things, fistula, are effects of FGM. So now after the community outreach or dialogue, we now go out of our way and sit with those women. Now we tell them, this is now a doctor, this is a nurse. I may not be able to help you, but why don't you tell your issues to this doctor? Some of them get help, assistance, but again others, when you think about the poverty index in Tana River, remember Tana River has been marginalized and devolution came just the other day. I am happy that, I'm glad that my sister has been to Tana River. I wish you go tomorrow and see even the kind of water people are getting, and water is a basic need. The kind of water these people are drinking, the kind of hospitals these people are surrounded with, the high literacy level, and imagining the schools that are there. So, and when we talk about education, it's only ECD that has been devolved. How can these people access primary? How can these people access secondary? Now imagining all these things, poverty, literacy, all these things. We really need thorough education. We really need thorough sensitization. And it's not just about bringing the facility. It's about engaging this community and telling them the benefits of going there. I am educated and I understand all these things about infertility and all these things. I know, I learned through biology. What about my mother? Does she even know? There was a time I was telling them about female genital mutilation. And one of the cases, a girl said, I was unable to urinate. And that, when I asked the cutter, she was telling me, but we left her a hole. And I told her, no, maybe you have covered the hole for urinating. And she was asking me, what are you talking about, young girl? A woman has only one hole. Wow. Yes. And to my surprise, I was shocked. This is a cutter. Yes, she is the same traditional healer. She is the same traditional birth attendant, helping mothers to deliver. If she doesn't even know that a woman has two holes, one for urinating and the other one for... What will happen to these innocent girls? What will happen to these women in the rural areas, not in towns? Someone like me can go and see a gynecologist. What will happen to this woman who even fears to open up to her husband? How will she go to another man and ask for medication? Maybe it's time we think about bringing also female nurses who can understand these women, whom they can open up and tell their stories. Another thing, there is issue of NGOs and campaigning against maybe reproductive health and all. Gladys, there is something that always hurts me. I am an activist. I cover the entire county. And there are so many NGOs getting funding in the name of reproductive health, in the name of ending FGM, but they never left Nairobi. They're always circulating here. Millions are spent in conferences. Yesterday when I brought up this issue, someone else wanted to tell me conferences are important. I'm not condemning all conferences. I'm not overruling conferences. But it's high time we minimize. Can we just feel the pain these women are going through? Can we for a moment close our eyes and get the clear picture? Imagine if I tell you how we have normalized burning even to small kids. You may not even imagine. You are a medical doctor and I know you understand. There is this milk teeth. For me, I learned through biology. What about this mother? They think those milk teeth is something that brings infection. It's normal for when a child is becoming to bring those teeth. They go through that normal of diarrhea. It's just normal. But for them, they go, take a razor blade, the milk teeth is removed. And they take salt and apply to that area. This is a small child. If they don't see the plastic teeth and the child is diarrheaing, they go take, there is a form of rod, they burn the place. This is a pain that we are enduring since from childhood. Maybe later on I will show you. I have some burns here and here. When you are born, they fear maybe your head will become large. They burn you here, these sides and here. Maybe because of the hair, you may not get to know there. But you can see this, the marks are clearly. When someone maybe, my leg is paining, maybe I have my bones, maybe I have some problems. But for them, they start burning you from here up to the toe. They burn you. For example, when they call Sindiri, and I know all Somalis will understand what I mean.
What does that mean?
Sindiri is like, they feel there is a certain type of disease that can affect your leg. Again, there is something called, there is that infection, fungal infection, that affects the eye, and it turns red. Something like a spot in the eye. If it's the left side, they burn a rod, with a rod, two here in the right side. They call it firer. Again, now I have a problem with my, I have seen my finger swollen. But if I go now to my mother, she will tell me this is another fungal infection that needs to be burned. They take a rod, simply put it until it turns red, they now burn here. How? Again, another thing, and I'm sorry, I have to tell you all these pains we are enduring as a community. Those who are living in rural areas really need a lot of sensitization. And it's high time we utilize all these resources that are wasted in big towns. We go and utilize them in, just imagine, Gladys, how many meetings will someone hold with 1 million at a grassroots? It doesn't even cost more than 100,000 to hold a meeting in a village. But now in a conference like in Nairobi can take more than 3 million. How many village meetings will I have conducted in Tana River, for instance?
With
Just
those
imagine.
resources.
Yes.
Okay, now clearly she has painted a picture that it goes beyond reproductive health. There are very many other retrogressive and harmful ways of just dealing with health issues. But at this point, Daktari, we cannot ignore that, as you said, some of the methods that were used in the yesteryears actually were evolved and became part and informed medicine today. We cannot ignore that some of these traditional healers have a say within the community. So how best, from a doctor's point of view, can we infiltrate these cultures, these societies, and be able to inculcate some of these modern methods?
Oh, well, healthcare is literally right up there next to spirituality. Those are two very key pillars to people. So when we talk about such sensitive matters, then it is very important to understand what we call medical anthropology, where you have to understand the people, their way of life, what makes them tick, before you're able then to know how do you enter. And those are some of the methods that are important when you're designing community strategies. So where we're sitting, we need to understand the subtle power play that goes on in these communities. Africans are people who very much revere people who are either viewed as spiritual healers or healthcare people who will give relief to body pain. And so the people who do this art, they're not going to just relinquish that special position that they hold in the community that makes people look up to them. By the time somebody is known to be a traditional healer that people will travel kilometers to come for care for, they've worked very hard to calculate that, to cultivate that image. They're not going to just let you take it away from them. So one of the things that we must do is be able, and that's why you're seeing in places like Rongo, the traditional birth attendants are where? In the hospitals. The ministry's strategy was go out there, work with these people. They have a following, they have a constituency that will listen to them and not you. You're an outsider. She's bringing up a very important aspect, that it doesn't matter what I say as a healthcare practitioner. If I am a male in a community where a woman cannot even be seen, let alone converse with a strange man, then going in as a male to say, I'm going to give this education is not going to work. So we must then understand different communities, their different needs, the things that are very unique to them, and then deal with that and craft solutions around that. So that then brings us to start building the trust that we're talking about. So if we're going to put up a new health facility in a space that has never had one, who do you start with? Bring the traditional healers. Show them this is what happens here, this is what we do this. How can you help us help your people? You know, so then they feel obliged because you haven't taken away the power from them, but they're going to be the ones who are telling people that this is where to go. I remember an experience when I was in Tana River, and we had this young boy, he was just about 15 years old, and he came and he was actually put in a female dress, and his abdomen was like this big. So they said he's 15 and he's pregnant, and we know he's been bewitched. So what are you going to do? We've been through all traditional healers and nobody's helping. Now let's just try the hospital as a last option. Okay? And this boy just had suffered liver failure, and this was just a symptom of liver failure because he was accumulating fluid in his abdomen. He was in a state where not much could be done already. it was too late. His liver had failed, and unless he got a liver transplant, we really weren't going to be able to help him. But now how do you communicate that back to the culture? Because you cannot help him in that space. He goes back to the community, and what is the message? Even those hospitals can't help you. You understand? And if you and this issue of health is so close to a person's heart that we need to stop assuming that it is purely a matter of lack of exposure or lack of education. We have seen very highly educated people in their Prados headed to Loliondo. Does that mean they don't have exposure, information, or knowledge? This is the era of internet. Everybody reads online. They will come to you, you will tell them you have infertility, and for the kind of infertility you have, probably your best chance at having a baby is going to be in vitro fertilization. And they look at you and they say, okay, Daktari, I will be back. And by the time they come back to us 5 years later, they've been to the healer, they've traveled to Tanzania, they have gone all the way to Nigeria to see the most senior of them all, they have seen the Sangoma in South Africa, because as a people, our culture still doesn't allow us to really just look at this is the solution, because we still look at it as white man's medicine, and we're not white people. So how much worse is it for that Kenyan who's never left the village where they were born? The farthest they've gone is 5 kilometers away to the local market. Even if they've been educated, she comes from a very difficult county health-wise to manage. It's the most poorest country in this county in this country. The culture is so difficult. Tana River has mainly the Pokomo who settle. They farm, and so they settle. And for them, it is easy for them to develop and go to school because they're living in one place every day. So if you actually look at their villages, there are schools, there are churches, they have access to basics. And they're definitely going to be easier to change culturally and adapt. But when you look at the Mwanawadi communities within the same county, the Orma, for instance, they're moving. They're looking for cattle feed, and they're looking for where they can graze their animals. They move everywhere. These are the people who would have benefited from mobile clinics instead of distributing them in Nairobi, for instance, where there's a clinic literally every 5 meters. So how are we going to bring these mobile clinics? There's no access to roads. How are they going to move? Health is not one of those things that you're going to leave to the Ministry of Health and say it will deliver. All the other ministries must come in. There has to be access to clean water. So what's the Ministry of Water doing in that space? There has to be roads. Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure must come in. We have to construct these hospitals. There has to be Ministry of Education. How do you make sure these children are getting access to education? We have free education, but are we making, has the government considered that for these nomadic communities, we need maybe boarding schools, so that as the families move around looking for pasture, these ones can be domiciled in one place and get a quality education? So there's a whole range of activities that are not going to be left to one person before we can say we can move ahead. It is very sad that more than 60 years down the line, we've been independent all this time. We've marginalized parts of this country so badly that the discrepancy between a person in that village and a person in the city, they could as well be on 2 different continents. It's not right. Yet our policy makers are the same.
Yeah.
I would also like to support what she's talking about NGOs. We have a problem. My personal conviction is that there is no such thing as poor medicine for poor people. We refuse that completely. And that is a problem that has slowly been perpetuated by a lot of our development partners, where they say, look, this is what we do in the West. We're going to go to poor places in Africa. There's no access to electricity, no water. So let us coin something cheaper. We then sometimes compromise the quality of care we give to those people. But you go to South Africa, the hospitals have exactly the same service, the same manpower, the same equipment, irrespective of where they are located. So why are we not achieving that? This is a huge challenge that UHC has to face up to, that it won't just come with providing drugs and everything. You're going to understand that you're going to have to start construction, which is capital investment that we're not yet talking about in UHC. That these places will require hospitals, will require equipment, and that means that they must be supported by Energy Ministry, by who have you, to ensure these things work. And then now we can leave it to the likes of the community people to tell their people that, look, this is what the government has done for you. We need to start being able to utilize these resources, because whether we like it or not, that's our tax money there.
Okay, now even as we wait for what Dr. Basira is talking about, effect, the use of community health workers has been very alternative and modern.
That AMREF have gone through or brought on board and to increase access to health from the community to the facility level. Over the years, AMREF works with communities. We realize that unless you work with community structures, apart from the structures that are established by the government, like community units where we have community health workers, we have other structures, the clan leadership, the religious leadership. These structures work perfectly well because the communities trust them. They trust their own. And that was the concept of community health strategy. Take health to the people, not the people to come for health, so that you identify through education at the household level and pull them out, refer them to the skilled health care for those who need that care. We have come and start talking to them. It was not easy. The clan elders and the cultural leaders have started understanding, and we have now seen increased alternative passage of right, meaning they leave the cat out. FGM is the cat which is affecting the womanhood, and allow this girl, one, to remain in school, to have her dignity, to have her dream in life, and this is now happening. Today, as we talk to you, we have also come up with an integrated approach into Kana community and Samburu, looking at the community leadership. There's a very strong cultural leadership in Turkana, where they use some leaders called the Emrons. They're like, they are gods, small gods there, but they're just the leadership, respect they give them. And their word cannot be passed. Even the government, a project called Timiza. Timiza is an integrated project that addresses reproductive health, water, hygiene and sanitation, and other aspects of health at the community level. How have we, and then we gave our part of the solutions. Then they allow you to sit in their meetings because they have their structures and how they conduct their dialogue meetings. When they allow you and they listen to you and realize that your message is a message that is going to help the community, they will accept you. And that is the acceptance now we have in Turkana. And we have seen a massive change of the community to towards accepting health services. Increased immunization is experienced right now as I talk. Deliveries in the health facilities has gone up. We have seen immunization. So all this goes up because you have gone through the community systems. And that is the reason why we are saying when we use community health strategy approach in the right way, we use the structures of community units where we have the community health workers to be the health providers, but use the structures of leadership and governance to provide the way and the leadership. That is what can happen in the county of Tana River and anywhere else. The government is there pushing for change. But the question is, how much do they invest in that change at the community level? In Tana River right now as we talk, they are supposed to establish 66 community health units. They have managed to do 54 out of their target. That means each community unit should cover a population of 5,000 people and work with a minimum of 10 community health workers. Today, they have only managed to bring on board 1,360 community workers or volunteers. And that does not go to the ground If they can manage to be on the ground like AMREF is doing with the government, then I tell you we can manage to provide effective and quality health service. Because community health workers, when well trained, they transform the communities, whether in health, in agriculture, in nutrition, whichever way they are holistically trained using a standardized training curricula. And that is the reason why we are saying today we are campaigning strongly that let the government of Kenya recognize community health volunteers and allocate resources to motivate them. They say a stipend is there, remuneration, but it is not allocated.
Okay, now I'll catch you short, George, just for a moment, even as we come back for closing remarks, right after we cross over to Narumoru to our reporter Melita Tenges, who now has an update about that road accident he had mentioned earlier on that claimed 4 lives along the Narumoru road. Melita?
Right, Gladys, thank you again. Was heading to Isiolo from Nairobi, and a G4S carrier truck that was heading from Meru to Nairobi. The OCPD for Kieni East, Wilberforce Sicharani, has been able to confirm these to members of the press, saying the accident occurred at around 11:30 p.m. Yesterday night at around at Moru Sub-County Hospital, which is a few kilometers from where we are. The bodies of those who that they are yet to identify what actually caused this accident. They're saying they are not privy as to whether the accident was caused by either of the vehicles overtaking or either of the drivers losing control, but they're saying that our investigations are in order to know what exactly caused this accident. Again, the OCPD, Wilberforce Sicharani, has called upon motorists who are plying the route to also be vigilant and observe all the traffic rules in order to avoid such accidents. Also, Gladys, among those who died, we understand that there were 2 administration police officers that were seated at the front seat of the G4S truck, and they were escorting the goods that were being ferried to Nairobi by the carrier truck. And Gladys, these are some of the details that we've been able to gather regarding the accident that at 11:30 p.m. yesterday night. That is all, Gladys, from Narumoru. Back to you.
Thank you, Melita Oletenge, speaking to us from Narumoru, where there was an accident late last night that claimed 4 lives along the Narumoru road, and it involved a bus heading to Moyale via Isiolo, and it was in a head-on collision with a G4S truck. And as you've heard, the leaders in that region and security enforcers also telling the road users to stay vigilant even as they use that road. For now, we're back in Nairobi, and we cross over to the Eastleigh area of Nairobi, where our reporter Victor Kiprop is standing by. And this is because the Eastleigh business community today decided to close their businesses in solidarity and in condemnation of the recent terrorist attack at Riverside. Kiprop?
Thank you very much, Gladys. We are live from the Eastleigh days ago, and with us we have the Kamukunji Member of Parliament, Yusuf Hassan, who's going to tell us a few things on just what exactly they are doing today. Honorable Hassan, good morning. What's going on today?
Well, we had come together with the ECT to come out to remember the victims of the Riverside attack, and to condemn the actions of organizations like Al-Shabaab that had claimed to have carried out this attack. We want to express our condolences and our sympathy with the families of the victims. And also we want to say in very clear terms, no to Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab does not represent us. It does not speak for us. It is not acting on our behalf. As a matter of fact, we are victims of Al-Shabaab and its terrorist activities, and together as a community we have been fighting ideologically to roll back the influence of this particular organization. And to a certain extent we have defeated that. No longer are young people joining this organization, no longer do they carry out the attacks that they used to carry, and therefore here we have come together today to say no to them, and to express our solidarity with the rest of the people of Kenya, that we are Kenyans. We are in Kenya for worse, and we will work to ensure that we live in peace and harmony to deal with radicalization and violent extremism.
All right, you might want to shed us some lights on just how long this close down of operations will take, and what exactly is your message to the entire country during this time when we are recovering from this attack?
My message is that we are together in this. We should stay strong. We should stay united. We should stay together, and that's the only way we can overcome the problems that we have. And I also want to say that we do not at any time, anyway, condone the activities of extremist organizations, because no organization can speak on our behalf. And Al-Shabaab is not Muslim, it is not Somali, it is just a murderous organization. And if Kenyans wake up to that reality, then they would not be able to think in any negative terms. They would be able to think in terms of working together as a community to defeat this evil.
All right, finally, as you may have realized from various news reports from across the country, it appears that some of the assailants that were in this attack have been housed or have been, assisted by some of our youth or our fellow citizens who have, through what we call as radicalization.
Absolutely.
From various parts of the country, Meru, Kiambu. What is your message, and what are you doing as the leadership of the area to continue helping the youth and fighting radicalization?
Here we have actually carried out quite a big campaign of radicalization. We have been able to sensitize our young people. We have been able to provide them with training, because some of these young people, the weakest link are people, unemployed people, idle people, people have no proper skills or education. We've put a lot of these young people through training, through our technical institutions. We have set up the first Ajira center in the country, ICT for job opportunities for young people. And we have been engaging. In fact, to a certain extent, Al-Shabaab has lost all ground here in Kamkunji. We have rolled back the influence of Al-Shabaab in many ways because of our interventions. The government is doing the hard part of it. We're doing the soft part of it. And even if you look at the hard part of it, Al-Shabaab is being degraded and weakened in Somalia. And therefore, we believe that it is just a matter of time before we defeat Al-Shabaab militarily. And then we deal with the social issues of how we can help our young people, particularly those who have joined them. Many of them are coming back in terrible state, and we're rehabilitating them. So we're working at many fronts, because the problem of Al-Shabaab is not purely military, it is also social and economic. And we will work with marginalized communities to ensure that they become part of the Kenyan success and be helpful and active citizens.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hassan. Right there, you heard from the man himself, Kamukunji Member of Parliament, Yusuf Hassan. And as you heard earlier from the business community here, the message is quite clear that they are standing with the rest of the country at this moment when we are, when the country is battling terrorist attacks left right here in the central business district. A few days from the Riverside attack that left at least 21 people dead. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Victor Kiprop, coming to us from the Eastleigh area, even as leaders and various communities come out in solidarity with those that lost their loved ones in that terrorist attack at 14 Riverside Drive here in Nairobi. But we now change gears and go to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court has actually upheld the election of Anwar Loitip Lamu Senator, Wanjiko Kibe of Gatundu North, Kangongo Bowen of Marquette East, but Ahmed Kolosh of Wajir West has actually lost his bid. Let's listen in.
Again, although a much longer judgment, appearances. Mr. Otachi, Orengo Senior Counsel, Awele, Odhiambo, Isaac, you are appearing for the second and third respondents. Thank you. although longer than the other two, I will still summarize it in the way I've done the other two judgments. At pages 1, 2, 3, all the way to page number 21, we summarize the cases before the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the submissions before this court. We have then distilled the following 7 issues as following for determination. The first question is jurisdiction. The second question is whether the appeal before the Court of Appeal was competent. Number 3, whether the Court of Appeal admitted in failing to admit the video evidence that was submitted in the High Court. Issue number 4, 5A of the Elections Act. Issue number 5, where the Court of Appeal misdirected itself in the interpretation of Article 81 and 86 of the Constitution. Issue number 6, whether the first respondent discharged the burden of proof in the appeal before the Court of Appeal. And number 7, the reliefs available to the parties. On jurisdiction, we have looked at Article 163.4a, the case of Ali Hassan Joho, Lawrence Ndutu, and we have quoted in extenso the guiding principles that were set by Chief Justice Mutunga in that case. We have also reproduced parts of the judgment in Frederick Otieno Outa, Evans Kidero, and Waititu, and we have come to the conclusion that since this appeal touches both on Article 159.2d and the interpretation of Articles 81 and 86, we shall assume jurisdiction to that extent only. On the second question of the competence of the appeal as regards the notice of appeal, we have reproduced at paragraphs 33 and 34 the judgment of the Court of Appeal in the way it rendered itself on the notice of appeal. The case of Kashim versus Bashir, a New Zealand decision. We have looked at Joseph Raz in the rule of law and its virtue in a paper entitled Rule of Law, Judicial Independence and Judicial Discretion. We have looked at HLA Hat, Discretion in Harvard Law Review, and quoted him in extenso. Daines Moredi, Daniel Kimani, Basil Criticos, TSC, and we have looked at rules 5 and 6, and we have come to the conclusion that notwithstanding the divergent positions taken by the Court of Appeal post-2017, for example, in the case of Simeon Lesirma and Musa Sirma, we have said that we don't see any reason to interfere with the discretion of the Court of Appeal in the way it handled the notice of appeal question. On the question of the video evidence, we have looked at the powers of the appellate court in as far as it can delve into matters of law or how it should treat matters of fact under Section 85A. And the Munya 2 case is the case classicus on that question. We have also looked at the case of Honorable Mohammed and Abdullahi, IBC versus Stephen Mutinda, Housing Finance versus Wafubwa, Kenya Post Authority versus Mitubel, and we have come to the conclusion that looking at the way the Court of Appeal handled the video evidence, we hold that the decision of the Court of Appeal not to admit the video evidence or even evaluate it was an excess of discretion as under Rule 29(1)B of the Court of Appeal rules, delimited by Section 85 of the Elections Act, and the party was also bound by the pleadings of the petitioner in the Court of Appeal before the Court of Appeal, which had no such prayer. And therefore, we deem it unnecessary to overturn the finding of the Court of Appeal regarding the video evidence. Did the Court of Appeal then overreach itself in the interpretation of in the application of Section 85A? We have looked at its decision on that question. We have looked at Munya 2. We have looked at Article 81 of the Constitution, and we have come to the conclusion that the Court of Appeal did not act in excess of its jurisdiction, and they acted in accordance with Section 85A and our decision in Munya 2. And therefore, the Court of Appeal cannot be faulted in the way
Listening to proceedings coming from the Supreme Court about various election petitions, and we are expecting more ruling on the various petitions in court to come throughout the day. So far, what we know is that the Supreme Court has upheld the election of Anwar Loitip Lamu Senator, Wanjiru Kibe of Gatundu North, Kangongo Bowen of Marquette East, and Ahmed Kolosh of Wajir West has actually lost his bid. We know that Embakasi MP, that is Babu, we know is awaiting his fate, and we shall definitely keep you updated on the same. But before we cross over again to the Supreme Court, just quick closing remarks with my panel this morning, even as we were talking about reproductive health. And I'll start with you, Sadia. Coming from Tana River, we have seen and are now aware of some of the challenges you're dealing with. What would be your clarion call for those stakeholders that are in health and how they can help you change how health is perceived from your area?
I would like to say that there is a need for a massive action and sensitization within villages. We really need to do a lot of awareness on reproductive health and also tell the people, those women who are really suffering, that there are modern ways of treating those infections, infertility, and all those other things they are doing. But again, the challenge will be, in as much as maybe for Daya, we would want to refer these women to the nearest health facilities to seek medical attention. What will be the probability that they may be able to access those facilities, given the fact that some of them are as far as 38 kilometers, 50 kilometers away? How will, and having in mind that there is also those poverty issues and all those things, how are they going to access? That's a challenge to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, George, the success story of community health workers, but there still are gaps going forward. What should we consider?
Yeah, thank you, Gladys. I think the key thing that motivates community health workers to provide health care is recognition. If the county governments and the national government can put systems in place that give them motivation through recognizing what they are doing, giving them a chance to get the allowances which is put in their policies and they don't get, and then improving by using the mechanisms of supervising them effectively and following up on them, that will bring healthcare closer to the people. The other point is working with community leadership to provide governance over health systems, health services that take place at the community level and referred to the nearest health facility level. These mechanisms, integrated approach, works better today than when we have silos approaches using different partners and different organizations to bring healthcare. So for us, we have seen this works, and that is the reason why I was saying integrated approach we are using in Turkana today, in Samburu. We are seeing significant increased quality health care access by the communities in those areas. This is simply because the community leadership have recognized the partnership as working for them.
Okay. All right, and in closing, Daktari, you have been in the world of reproductive health, and as much as we're talking about the challenges in the grassroots, even within the modern setting, we still are grappling with some challenges too. Your clarion call.
The Constitution is very clear. Health is a right, and it even went further to state, including reproductive health. This right is not only for people who are educated and exposed and who can read the Constitution. It's a right to every Kenyan. Therefore, those women in Tana River, in their poverty, in their lack of access, it is upon the government to deliver. Both national and county governments, that's their job. They must deliver. The Constitution isn't for only a certain class of people. Everyone has a right to access healthcare. The strategies that need to be done, that's the fine detail. Okay, the bottom line is that we have a constitutional mandate to deliver to our people. It must happen, and whatever strategies must be used must be put in place. The investments that are required must be put in place. This, when we are talking about universal health coverage, is where the rubber meets the road.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nelly Bosire, gynecologist, George Oele, Community Health Strategy Technical Advisor at AMREF, and Sadia Hussein, Coordinator of Daya Women Group. Thank you so much for your time, even as we talked about the hits and misses when it comes to matters reproductive health. We call it a day on NTV today, this Friday. My name is Galdys Gachanja. Before I sign off, just a quick one from the Supreme Court, which has upheld the election of Embakasi MP, that is Babu Owino, and of course a lot more will be coming from that end, and we now leave you from some of those pictures and sound coming outside the Supreme Court.
Of the people of the constituency, because they elected Babu Owino overwhelmingly, and all the issues, including the issues that were being relied on by the appellant in the trial court, issues like violence, all those issues have been dismissed by the Supreme Court. And therefore, I wish Babu Owino well. Now the sky is the limit, and I hope that is now going to help the party leader Raila Amolo Odinga and the coalition ODM and the Building Bridges Initiative for Kenya to go to greater heights. Thank you.
First of all, I must take this opportunity to thank the Almighty God that the Supreme Court has upheld the decision of the Court of Appeal, confirming me as the duly elected Member of Parliament in Embakasi East constituency. I would also like to thank my family. I would like to give special thanks to Senior Counsel James Orengo and Awele, and also the IBC lawyer, who's also worked closely with us. This is so wonderful, and I must say that I love you all. You did this thing from your heart. We've won this case together, and I also want to thank the Embakasi East constituents for giving me all this support and giving me the mandate to serve them. I would love to tell people that tomorrow will be better than today. Let's have hope. We are going to go for what we want. We are going to support the building initiative, the programs for the building initiative, all the programs for building initiative that is supported by President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga. I will always be at the forefront to fight for these two gentlemen. And lastly, the Bible says that the ways of the righteous will always be brighter and brighter. May God bless everybody. May God bless Kenya. And this is the first step for bigger things to happen. Thank you all. God bless you all. This case has indeed, to some extent, it has affected my work at Embakasi East constituency, because I was working with one leg inside and the other leg outside. But I always knew that God would grant me this opportunity to be declared the duly elected leader for Embakasi East constituency. But the way I've served them so far, so good. At least I've delivered 70% of my promises. And today being the first day that I can confirm that I'm a member of parliament, I'm really going to work for these people. I'm going to do extra to the residents of Embakasi East constituency and to Kenyans. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Yeah.